If you're someone who opens a book and starts reading right away to learn a concept or go through a chapter, this video is for you. Whether you're trying to ace an exam, master a new skill like playing a guitar, or just get better at anything faster than you ever thought possible, you need to watch this entire video because today we're talking about how to learn any of these things ultra fast. A lot of what I'll be sharing today comes from Scott Young's book called Ultra Learning. This book dives deep into the strategies that can accelerate your learning, helping you achieve more in less time. I have personally used many of these techniques during my bachelor's and my MBA, and even in my corporate career. So these strategies are not just about learning quickly, they are about learning deeply and really mastering that skill. So let's jump right into it. First, let's talk about how you can map your learning journey. A mistake that a lot of students who I have mentored personally make is they'll open the book and start reading right away whenever they have to learn something new. That's like when you have to climb a mountain peak, you start by walking whichever route is visible right away. However, that's a massively inefficient process, not to mention dangerous. Here is what you can do instead. Before diving into any new subject, spend some time researching how to learn it effectively. Scott in his book calls this process meta learning or learning how to learn. This step is like scouting the map before starting a video game. You want to understand the main challenges, essential resources, and the best pathways to success. When I was studying for the GMAT, I didn't just dive into the concepts of sentence correction. I first looked at what the top scorers were doing. I researched the most effective prep materials, study schedules, and techniques. This roadmap prevented overwhelm and saved me from wasting time on ineffective methods. Now for you to implement this strategy, here is a very easily memorable acronym, which is called ROAD. So R stands for research. What it basically means is that you need to identify the best resources for that particular subject. O stands for observe, as in you have to learn from other people's experiences, maybe the seniors in your program, or maybe people who have done particularly well in the exam or in the skill that you're trying to learn. A stands for analyze. Basically, you need to break down the subject into manageable chunks and then analyze which component you need to focus on first and which would be the lowest hanging fruit that you can easily crack and which would give you the highest ROI in terms of scores or marks or progress if you're trying to learn a particular skill. D stands for design. Design as in you need to create a roadmap with clear milestones. You can't just go into the process without any milestones or goals set for yourselves. And again, the goals need to be in the SMART format, which I have talked about in my other video. As Scott says in his book, the time that you invest in planning how you will learn is often the time that will pay off the most. Alright, the second essential thing to learn ultra fast is finding your focus zone. See, learning quickly requires intense focus, making it crucial to find the conditions where you are most productive. Scott highlights the concept of directness, which essentially means creating an environment that mirrors where you will apply that skill. For me, late nights with soft instrumental music were my sweet spot. But everyone's focus zone can be different. Maybe it's a quiet room for you, a buzzing coffee shop, or a short, intense bursts of work. Now some practical strategies that you can bring into your routine while you're trying to learn a particular skill or any subject ultra fast are as follows. Number 1. Set up a distraction-free workspace where your attention is simply on the task at hand. So for example, if you're using digital devices while you're trying to study or while trying to learn a particular skill, it is best to use features like focus mode, which is available in most devices. Number 2, you can use the Pomodoro technique, which is 25 minutes of focus followed by 5 minutes of breaks. You repeat this cycle 4 times and then you take a longer break. This has hands down been the most effective focusing strategy for me so far in whatever I have tried to learn. If you have ever been to the gym, you would have been told to do 3 sets of 12 reps each of some exercise to train a particular muscle. Our brain works the same way. Those 25 minutes of focus stress our brain, and the 5-minute break helps it to recover to put in the next round of focus where you can do actual deep work. So try it next time you study or while trying to practice the skill that you're trying to learn. It might take a while to get used to it, but it will surely be very effective. Let me know in the comments how it goes for you. And remember, finding your focus zone is about experimenting until you discover what works the best for you. Now, the third essential tip to learn anything ultra fast is to engage with the material, which is also called as active practice. See, reading and memorizing alone never cuts it. The key is to engage with the material actively. Scott, in his book, emphasizes direct practice, which is essentially doing the task you're trying to master as closely as possible to the real thing. Now, this is not to say that you don't need to spend time on learning the concepts at all. But spending the majority of your time just rereading the text will not get you anywhere. You need to spend the majority of your time actually practicing the stuff that you're trying to learn. For example, while preparing for my exams, I spent less time reading textbooks and more time solving practice questions. This mimics the actual exam environment or the environment where you would be practicing that skill that you're trying to learn. For example, playing a guitar. Now, to talk about a practical framework to bring in more practice into your routine and to help you engage more actively with whatever skill you're trying to learn is called as practice. So P stands for practice regularly. R stands for recreate real world scenarios. A stands for avoid passive learning, which is, for example, if you just keep highlighting your notes or rereading the textbook as we just discussed. C stands for concentrate on active tasks like solving problems. That is more specific to if you're trying to study a particular concept or studying for a particular competitive exam. T stands for try immersive techniques. For example, if you're trying to learn a language, watch movies in that target language, which gives you an immersive experience of that skill that you're trying to learn. I stands for identify the gaps and work on them. See, when you start practicing, you will get to a certain level, but then you will plateau. And to break through that plateau, it is very essential to identify where you're going wrong and then work on them specifically, which will help you push through that plateau and get to that next level in that skill. C stands for celebrate small wins. Every time you make a small progress, it is worth celebrating. Maybe share it with your friends or your family, or go out and give yourself a small reward, whatever you may like. Maybe food, maybe hanging out with friends, maybe playing that video game. Whatever works for you, do celebrate that small win because it will help you keep going and keep that momentum. E stands for evaluate progress frequently. As it is said, what gets measured gets done. If you are not measuring your progress, you will not know how much you have done, how far you have come, and how much further you have to go. Keeping a tab on the progress and the important metrics in learning that skill will push you ahead in the top 1% within that skill. Now I want to take this section and focus on a very important aspect that we just discussed, which was to drill into your weaknesses, because it has been so essential in my educational journey, and all the plateaus that I faced, I was able to break through because of this one particular practice. See, it is easy to focus on what you are already good at, but real progress is going to come from targeting your weak points. Scott, in his book, calls this drilling, isolating and improving the weakest aspects of your performance. When I was studying for the CFA exams, for example, I excelled in quantitative sections, but struggled with topics like ethics, which is a more subjective and abstract topic. So once I realized this pattern, and I realized that ethics was the only topic pulling down my entire performance, I devoted extra time to ethics until I felt comfortable. I built an error log, practiced a few questions daily, and kept measuring my progress till I was able to get a breakthrough. So tackling your weaknesses head on might be uncomfortable at first, but it is the real fastest way to grow. Now, like we just discussed, a very practical tip to implement this technique is to keep an error log, which is supremely effective in such cases. You can download the error log I use for my CFA prep down in the description below if that helps. What you need to do is, once you realize your weak spots, you need to allocate focused study sessions to address them. Seek feedback or use additional resources than what you might have already used to break through that plateau and get to that next level of performance. Now I need to talk about something which is even more important than learning. See, learning a skill is great, but retaining what you have learned is even more important. Once you have practiced that particular skill, for example, learning a language or playing a guitar, if you don't actively practice it for a long enough period of time, you're just going to forget it. That's just how our brain works, and it has been researched by a lot of scientists, and it is something known as the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. So after a certain period of time, our brain keeps dropping information, and if that period is long enough, it will completely drop it from your long-term memory, rendering it impossible for you to be as good at that skill as you were before. So spaced repetition works by reviewing that material or practicing that skill at increasing intervals, just as you're about to forget it. This technique reinforces long-term memory. So I relied on spaced repetition to memorize formulas and key concepts for the CFA and the GMAT exams. And there are apps in the market now which automate this process beautifully. You can make flashcards and the app will tell you when to review that flashcard again and again till it is embedded into your long-term memory. So to apply and bring in spaced repetition into your routine when you're trying to learn something is to identify key information that needs memorization. Now be very clear that this technique helps in retaining that information or encoding that information into your long-term memory. It is not a substitute for practice itself, which essentially gives you the ability in that skill in the first place. So to practice spaced repetition, use a tool like Anki app or set reminders for regular reviews. Gradually increase the interval between those reviews. I have also talked about this technique in this other video, so if you want to deep dive into it, don't forget to check it out later. Now the next strategy that I want to talk about is embrace feedback. Learning quickly doesn't happen in isolation. See, feedback loops help you identify blind spots and correct mistakes early on. Whether it is from a mentor, peer, or self-assessment, feedback provides valuable insights for improvement that you might have missed by yourself. So during my MBA, I sought feedback from professors, friends, and peers on case studies, resumes, and presentations. Constructive criticism, though uncomfortable at times, was instrumental in refining my skills. To bring in this feedback loop into your strategy when you're trying to learn something is to actively seek feedback from others. Treat criticism as an opportunity to improve and adjust your approach based on the feedback that you have received. Once you go through this loop a couple of times, it is bound to give you that extra boost of growth that you need to the next level in your journey. The next tip that Scott talks about in this book is called exploration, which is essentially pushing beyond the syllabus or core requirements if you're trying to study something. So when I was preparing for the CFA exam, I explored applications of financial concepts in real world scenarios. I would often dabble with a lot of online platforms, go to a lot of financial websites and read a lot of financial news to see where I could apply the concepts that I was learning. This really deepened my understanding and made me more confident in my understanding. So if you want to push the boundaries in your own learning journey, take on advanced projects or case studies. Maybe explore additional resources outside the curriculum that you have been assigned. This is something which is going to give you that extra edge to really shine out in the skill that you're trying to learn. And the last strategy, and my personal favorite, is teach what you have learned. It is also known as the Feynman technique in the name of the famous scientist, Dr. Feynman. So see, teaching is one of the most effective ways to solidify your understanding. The Feynman technique involves breaking down complex ideas and explaining them simply, like I'm trying to do right now, to help you learn anything that you want to learn better and ultra fast. So if you struggle to explain a concept, it means you need to revisit it. When I studied finance, I often explained challenging concepts to my friends who weren't from a finance background. If they had any questions that I couldn't answer, it helped me identify gaps in my own understanding and refine my knowledge to improve and get to that next level. So to apply Feynman technique into your own learning journey, choose a concept that you want to learn. For example, maybe you're trying to learn about AI agents, which are there in the market. So pick someone from your friend group who you trust or who you are really close with and explain to them as if you're teaching a 5-year-old. This will help you identify areas where you're struggling to explain, and then you can come back and revisit them to really solidify your understanding. So that's it. Those are my top strategies for learning ultra fast. Whether it is preparing for an exam, picking up a new skill, or really excelling at work, These tips can make a world of difference. If you like this video, don't forget to check out this other video as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.